Emotional starvation has been sold to men as self-mastery, but it's not mastery. It's actually collapse in disguise. The most disconnected men are often the most praised in our society because they're quiet, because they're functional, and they don't really burden anyone. And so they call this strength. And we reward that as maturity. But it's neither, though. It's actually fear in a tuxedo. And we keep mistaking it for leadership. But let me make something very clear. The ability to suppress your emotions until no one, including yourself, can access them is not masculine. It's actually, it's not even stable. It's a slow burning crisis that's packaged in politeness. Because the kind of detachment that is, it doesn't lead to peace, but it leads to an erosion of trust and intimacy, of having any chance to be known. And we've confused disconnected men with disciplined men. But discipline invites awareness, and disconnection shuts down the system. And that shutdown has consequences where you stop hearing yourself. You stop trusting your instincts. You stop responding to the emotional temperature of a room because you're not actually in the room. You're really in your own fortress that's guarded and efficient and alone. So let's dismantle this lie. The lie that disconnection is strength. It's actually trauma. It's survival. It's grief that no one told you you were allowed to feel. And this episode is not about making men softer. It's about making men whole. Because wholeness means you don't have to disappear in order to be strong. I mean, think about this. How many men have made themselves invisible emotionally just to be perceived as powerful? Or how many have starved themselves of affection, of vulnerability, or even comfort just so that they could win approval? How many men are quietly dying behind the mask of composure? I mean, we don't call it that, but we call it being steady. We call it being dependable. But you weren't born to be a stoic statue. You were actually born to be a human being. You were born to connect, to feel, to show up with your whole self. But most of us never got permission to do that. Instead, we got scripts. Be a man. Stop crying. Shake it off. Don't show weakness. Keep it together, right? And we thought, okay, I guess this is what strength must look like. But the thing is, it's not strength. It's submission to a culture that never made room for your full humanity. And so you learned to shut up instead of to speak up, and to numb instead of to name, to withdraw instead of to reach out. And now you're wondering why you can't feel anything at all, why your relationship, in the relationships you have feel distant, and why sex doesn't even open you up anymore, why love doesn't seem to land, and why you can't even identify what you're feeling half of the time. See, this is not masculinity. This is the cost of disconnection. And I mean, let's be real. The world rewards you for this. You get respect, right? You get admiration. You get called a rock. But even rocks erode in silence. And no one teaches you how to grieve the parts of yourself that you buried just so that you could survive in the version of masculinity that they gave you. So you buried your softness. You buried your sadness, your longing, your need for touch. You buried the craving that you wanted to be seen. You buried it because you thought you had to. Because no one ever told you that being known was worth the risk. Because no one ever modeled what masculine intimacy looks like. And so you tried to be the man that the world told you to be. And somewhere along the way, you lost access to your own heart. But here's the good news. you can actually come back to yourself. You can redefine what masculinity is. You can build a version of strength that includes your ability to feel, not just your ability to hide. But first, you have to admit what disconnection has cost you. You see, disconnection feels safe because it gives you control. But it also costs you connection. And without connection, there is no intimacy, there's no nourishment, there's no aliveness. So you become a man who performs instead of a man who participates, one who provides but who never actually receives, one who's learned to protect others but he never lets anyone protect him. That's not strength. That's solitary confinement in plain sight if I ever saw it. And what makes it worse is this. People stop checking in because you're doing fine all the time, because you're not emotional, and because you never need anything for yourself. And now no one asks how you're doing because you train them not to. And when they don't ask, you don't tell yourself this. Like the story you tell yourself is, I must be really strong, or I must be independent, or I must be winning. But deep down, you're not proud. You're tired. Because this performance, it doesn't lead to love. It actually, it lands applause for you from a distance. They admire you, but they never get to know you. They never, yes, they may respect you, but they don't see you for who you truly are. They rely on you, yes, but they don't feel you. And this creates a crisis that not many are really talking about. And that's men who are surrounded but are starving for affection, starving for softness, starving for understanding, for words like, it's okay to need, it's okay to be held, it's okay to not know what you're feeling, but still want to be understood or felt or seen. But how do you ask for that when your whole life has taught you that needing makes you feel less, not more? Because here's the trap. You think that disconnection protects you from disappointments. But really, it just keeps you stuck in this loop of feeling misunderstood. You want closeness, but you don't risk honesty. You want support, but you don't reveal the struggle. You want intimacy, but you armor up before every conversation. And then you're wondering why no one reaches out to you. The truth? No one can connect with a performance. They can only connect with a person. But when masculinity is defined as a mask, the person that's underneath starts to rot. And this isn't about becoming someone else. This is actually about returning to someone that you buried once upon a time. The one who once felt freely, the one who cried without shame once upon a time, the one who didn't yet believe that being seen meant that they were unsafe. Because let's not forget, this isn't just emotional, this has physical aspects as well. This connection affects your body, your nervous system, your immune response, your sleep, your ability to bond. And a man who suppresses pain doesn't delete it. He just is storing it up internally. He stores it up in his jaw and in his chest, in his guts, in his habits, and in his silence. And he numbs it with work, with porn, with distraction, with achievement, anything that requires anything but vulnerability. And maybe no one calls him out on it because he's doing well. But doing well is not the same thing as being whole. And most men today are not whole. They're actually fractioned off. They're functional, but they're not full. And that's not their fault. It's their inheritance. See, this system, this version of masculinity, was not designed for connection. It was designed for utility. But you're not a utility. You're a human being. And a human being is not built to live in disconnection. We're actually built to belong. So here's the moment of truth. If your masculinity depends on you being unreachable, that's not masculinity, that's fear. If you can't name what you're feeling without shame, that's not power, that's actually programming. If you've learned to disappear emotionally because it gets you praise, that's not maturity, that is conditioning right there. And here's the worst part. The worst part is you've probably started confusing this with your identity. And so you think it's just who you are now. You're quiet, you're unflinching, you're untouchable. But it's not who you are. It's who you say, like it's basically who you've become to be able to stay safe in a world that punishes vulnerability. And that's why this episode isn't blaming men. It's about freeing men. Because if we don't name this disconnection for what it is, a slow collapse masked as composure, we'll be celebrating men that are silently starving. And we can't afford to be doing this anymore. There's nothing masculine about slowly dying on the inside. And that's exactly what's happening when your definition of manhood revolves around not needing anything. Not needing comforts, not needing reassurance, not needing closeness, not needing to be understood. But here's the contradiction in all this. You do need those things. Every human being needs those things. And so you end up living in this quiet conflict. You're wanting love, but you're unable to receive it. You're longing for connection, but you're terrified of showing up. You're craving softness, but you're mistaking it for weakness. And the loneliness, meanwhile, grows roots that are deep. And it doesn't come all at once, yes. It shows up, though, in little ways where you stop reaching out. You answer fine when you're anything but fine. And you scroll instead of calling someone. You zone out instead of opening up. You fantasize about a relationship where you're seen, but you never practice being seen where you actually are. And eventually it starts to feel normal. The silence, the stoicism, the shoulder shrugging answers, right? But it's not normal. This is an erosion. And the price of all this is your intimacy. Because you can't build closeness with someone when your primary goal is to seem unaffected. Love requires access, and disconnection is a denial of access. So no matter how many relationships you enter, if you're still emotionally unavailable, you're just bringing a locked door into every room that you walk into. And then you wonder, why does no one see me? Or why does no one stay? Or why do I feel invisible even in the midst of relationships? Why does sex feel disconnected? Why does vulnerability scare me more than violence? And the truth is, you've armored up for so long that you forgot what it feels like to be open. And now openness actually feels dangerous, and it feels foreign, and it feels threatening. But it's not danger you're feeling, it's actually detox. You're detoxing from years of repression, from decades of disconnection, from a lifetime of being told that needing others makes you less of a man. And here's what no one told you. Masculinity does not require your disconnection. But healing requires your honesty. You have to start telling the truth to yourself first, to the people who are closest to you, to the parts of you that were locked away. You have to tell the truth that you miss being held, that you want to be known, that you want to be loved without needing to perform. This is not a weakness. This is courage on display. Because it's easy to perform masculinity, but it's much harder to embody your full self when the world's only trained you for being half of who you are. But the men who change the world are the ones who reclaim their hearts, the ones who choose connection over control, presence over performance, intimacy over invincibility. See, these men are not any less masculine. They are actually far more human. And in a world that's starving for wholeness, that is the power. And here's what disconnection actually protects you from. It protects you from rejection, yes, but not betrayal or heartbreak. Disconnection actually protects you more devastatingly from intimacy. And while that might sound like safety, what it really means is that you're protecting yourself from ever being seen. And you don't get judged, but you also don't get known intimately. You may not get hurt, but you don't get healed. And you may not be abandoned, but you also don't get chosen. I mean, not really, because no one ever meets the full you that wants and craves to be chosen. And you become the man that everyone trusts with the logistics and decisions and strategy and silence, but never for their vulnerability, because you were never given the chance to experience it. So the men around you become mirrors, and the women around you feel like this gap. And eventually you feel yourself saying things like, I feel like no one really knows me, or I'm tired of always being the strong one, or I don't know how to let people in anymore. That's not a personal failure though, it's a system failure. You were set up. You were conditioned to believe that disconnection equals dignity, that detachment equals dominance, that stoicism equals status. But here's the painful truth. You don't get to have intimacy without risk. And if you spend your life avoiding risk, you will also spend your life avoiding love. Because love is vulnerable. Love is reciprocal. Love is revealing. Love will not grow in the shadows of your silence. So then what's the alternative? The alternative is not a full surrender into chaos. It's not emotional volatility. It's not melting down at every inconvenience, but it's presence. It's learning how to be present with your own feelings. It's learning how to name what's happening on the inside of you. It's learning how to stay when everything in you wants to run. Staying in that discomfort, staying in the conversation, staying in the truth of the moment instead of the safety of the mask and fleeing. This is not the absence of masculinity. This is actually the reclamation of masculinity, because real strength is measured in accessibility, not aloofness. And so you become a man that people feel safe around. Not because you're always in control, but because you're always in connection. This kind of masculinity does not demand silence. It actually demands honesty. Not performance, but presence, right? And yes, this means you're going to have to unlearn decades of behavior. And it means that in admitting that your detachment isn't just a strategy, but it's also a wound. A wound that told you that your emotions were too much. A wound that said that your vulnerability would destroy you. That needing someone makes you weak. And those wounds don't disappear because you man up. They actually heal when you lean in. This healing is not sentimental, it's actually surgical. Because when you start reconnecting with your emotional life, you begin extracting the infection, the buried pain, the unspoken grief that has been quietly rotting your capacity for closeness. And in its place, something new begins to emerge. And it's a strength that doesn't flinch when feelings arise. It's a presence that doesn't disappear when conflict disappears. It's a heart that doesn't shut down when it's scared. This is what it means to be emotionally whole. Not emotionally perfect, but whole. And from this sense of wholeness, you don't just give intimacy, you actually also receive it. You receive it fully and freely and finally. But let me be honest. Disconnection is not easy. Disconnection doesn't ask anything of you. It lets you coast. It makes you appear composed, even when you're dying on the inside. But you see, ease is not the same thing as freedom. And if you're honest, disconnection hasn't really freed you. In, in, Instead, it has trapped you. It's made you a stranger to your own body. It's made touch feel foreign. It's made "I'm fine" your most rehearsed lie. And it's made your relationships shallow, even when they should be safe. It's made you hard to, like, it feels impossible to be close to you. And that is why this is a silent tragedy in so many men's lives. You don't get abandoned, but you also don't get embraced. You may not get hurt, but you're also never really healed. And you may not fall apart in the midst of all this, but you never actually get held, supported. You live in the middle, in the neutral, in the numb zone. And the numbness begins to feel like your identity, like fate. Like this is just how it's going to be. But my dear listener, it doesn't have to be so. The bridge back is not complicated, but it does require courage. Not the courage to leap, but the courage to open up, the courage to risk, to feel, to speak. Courage to text a friend and say, "I'm actually not okay right now." Or the courage to stay present when he wants to emotionally just vanish. The courage to cry without rushing to apologize. The courage to let someone hold you without making a joke to lighten the moment. This is the kind of masculinity that the world needs. A masculinity that feels and listens and connects and that leads you through presence and not performance. Because when men choose connection over control, so much changes. You raise your kids differently. You love your partner more deeply. You show up to your friendships with tenderness and truth. You become safe, not because you never fell apart, but because you now know how to come back. The men who live whole lives aren't the ones who never flinch. They're actually the ones who stopped running. Running from themselves, running from their stories, their history, from their softness, their vulnerability. So here's your invitation. Put the armor down. Come back to your heart. It's still there. It's still beating. It's still yours. And no, this journey isn't going to be clean. It's actually going to be messy, and you may have more opportunities that you shut down, and you may cry when you didn't mean to, and you'll feel awkward for asking for comfort. But in the midst of all this, you'll also begin to feel alive. And isn't that what you've been craving this whole time? Not just to be seen as strong, but to also be seen as real. Not just to be admired, but actually held as well. Not just to survive, but to feel. And the good news is this: it's not too late. You're not too far gone. You haven't missed your moment. The real you, the full you, the connected part of you is still waiting. Not at the end of some achievement, but right here in this moment, on the other side of your next honest breath. Let me know if this episode has spoken to you. I'd love to hear from you.